wormholes, particle physics, extra dimensions. Are the wonders of so-called reality really what they appear to be? Or do we exist in an elaborate hologram? Is our universe the result of random activity or the result of intelligent design? If a creator was involved, can we discover him through our perception of divine order? This is Into the Multiverse with Josh Peck.
We can actually learn a lot from the spiritual realm by gauging what's going on the human realm. Welcome to Into the Multiverse. I am your host, Josh Peck, and with me in studio, as always, my beautiful, lovely wife, Christina Peck. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you, honey?
I am fantastic. I'm really excited about today's show because we have a first-time guest on Into the Multiverse, though somebody who's been on Skywatch TV quite often, Lieutenant Colonel Bob Maginnis. Bob, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to have you. I think it was about a year ago that we all met for the first time in one of those conferences.
Right.
And I've been a follower of your work for a while. I've seen you on Fox News, seen you on a lot of different programs like that, and I'm always interested in what you have to say. For the audience, though, they might not be familiar with you or your work. What are your qualifications for the work that you do? What do you do?
Well, I've been in and out of Washington, D.C. for 50 years. I served 24 years of active duty in the U.S. Army. I was 9 years at the Family Research Council in Washington, and then subsequently for the last 15 years, I've been in the Pentagon. Mm-hmm. I run a bunch of contractors on international affairs. I've been a Fox News analyst. I'm an analyst for a number of other broadcast networks. And I'm an author and have been a columnist. So I've done a lot of stuff.
Fantastic. And your last book, Future War, was phenomenal. And you have a forthcoming book, which people will have to check out Skywatch TV in the upcoming weeks for more information on this. The Deeper State, subtitle Inside the War on Trump by Corrupt Elites, Secret Societies, and the Builders of an Imminent Final Empire. And I wanted to ask for your accolades before getting into that subtitle, because for those not familiar with Bob, this isn't just some basement blogger or somebody like that. He actually is inside. He knows what he's talking about. So when we talk about things like secret societies, we've dealt with topics like that on this show before.
One of my favorite topics.
Our audience seems to like it. Well, how would you define the deep state, and then what is the deeper state?
Well, the deep state, I see three layers. The top layer are what you hear in the media, the administrative state, the bureaucracy, the political class, the people who we elect, or the people that are hired to run the government. Mm-hmm. The second layer are the influencers, the political influencers that are, funding political campaigns, that are lobbying, the federal government and the political class, and the non-government organizations and others. Mm-hmm. So it's an entire layer. Really, the people that get their agenda pushed through the political class and the bureaucracy. The third layer is the spiritual.
Okay.
The people in the second layer are motivated by something, ideology, a progressive ideology, a liberal ideology, or whatever. Mm-hmm. But there has always been, in my 50 years, I've seen what I consider a demonic influence, with regard to what's going on in Washington. Sure. That should not surprise anyone.
Right.
We've got a massive federal government. We have influence all over the world. Most of the money flows in and out of Washington in one way or another. Why wouldn't the demonic forces try to influence the power brokers of this world? Mm-hmm. And Washington is a center of gravity for that. So I see those three layers really being played out.
Yeah, and I think especially recently we've seen a lot of this play out even in younger, like millennials.
Right.
And in very emotional ways. And, we run a science show. Mm-hmm. We try to be as fact-based as possible. But it seems like the motivation towards emotion over fact is running rampant. Yes. I of course I would throw liberals, some liberals in that, but some even on the right too.
Yes.
Like the alt-right and these groups that we hear about. Do you think there's a demonic influence there as well? And do you think there's more focus from the enemy on the younger generations because maybe maybe the enemy sees them as the future? Or do you think they're more focused on who's in power now because they're trying to get something pushed now? Or do you think maybe it's a little of both?
Yeah, it's a little of both. Clearly, those that are in power are subject to some sort of influence. And whether it's a demonic influence or it's just lust and greed and so forth. The younger people are subject to the influence through the media.
Yes.
Whether it's entertainment media or it's news media or whatever, the internet. And they're also influenced through education. Long ago, the progressive movement, used education to manipulate people. Dewey being, one of the leaders. Certainly, in the media today, if you watch how they manipulate messages and have subliminal messages as well, it's been phenomenal how people are moved, and the globalists, the progressives, see those two tools, education and media, as major tools in their kit bag to change the world. And they're doing a pretty good job of it, quite frankly.
Well, what do you think has changed over the period of even 40, 50 years ago, how we were taught the messages back then to today? What has changed? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, certainly our acceptance of certain lifestyles. I worked on the homosexual lifestyle in the Pentagon. I was one of the authors of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. 30, 40 years ago, there wasn't any question. In the vast majority of those that are in the rank and file in the Pentagon, much less across the country, that there were some serious issues, some moral issues there. Fast forward to today, after the education process has inundated people with different messages, the media has, really glamorized the homosexual lifestyle. Today we see, there's very little debate amongst a large segment of the population that this is just a different type of normal, radical transformation. But we've seen this in a lot of issues, and that's just illustrative of one.
Yeah, and we've seen that too. It's almost like these lifestyles are a point of posterity. I mean, you even have in universities, if a conservative speaker wants to speak, you'll have like like a mother on the far left who screams out, "I hope my son is gay." It's like,
yes, yep.
What a weird thing to say. Like, and it's not. I think it even goes further than like, well, is that bad or is that wrong or is it it even goes beyond that. It's just, why should that be a point of posterity? Why should that be better? Especially if we're fighting for, equality. I'm kind of playing devil's advocate to the liberal mind, but so we see that a lot. And then and this is something that we've noticed too in stuff that we watch, and because we like the more conservative kind of stuff, but. When these people are faced, and I don't want to throw all of them into this camp, but when many of these people are faced, especially the extremists, with just a logical discussion, they want to react in emotion, and usually that comes out with phrases like "you're a racist." I actually heard a funny quote. Who's a racist? A racist is somebody who's winning an argument with a liberal.
Yes, I saw that too.
I forget who said that, but I thought that was kind of funny. But that we do kind of see stuff like that, all this emotionally driven rhetoric. When I think, and of course we get that on conservatives too, but I think more often conservatives just kind of want to deal with the logic, deal with the facts, and kind of just be left alone. Have you noticed this too? Have you noticed this push from the left to kind of infiltrate the lives of everybody else and kind of tell them what to do, what to believe? Yet at the same time, according to them, it's supposed to be the religious people that are doing that. I maybe it's because I'm a Christian, but I don't see that oppressive type of Christianity having any kind of real influence the way that maybe the left does. What are your thoughts?
Well, I certainly write in the deeper state, Josh, about what I call the globalists that are really worshiping humanism, that really think that they're an elite. They should control the world. They want one world government. They want feudalism. They want to dictate to you and me what we can and cannot consume. There are a host of issues there. They also label people that disagree with them in a violent way, xenophobic or racist or bigoted or whatever phobia there is out there, they're going to say you're Islamic phobic or whatever. So they're very quick to do that. And that's unfortunate because they've dismissed objectivity. They will not consider what the facts of history. Now, to a certain degree, and to their defense, because of what I said earlier, the education establishment, certainly the public education establishment, has been overtaken by a liberal mindset. And they have tried to remove from our history books, things that may be unpleasant but need to be considered by those of us that are facing a real world today. And they go ahead and they rewrite history. Well, we need history, warts and all. We need to understand that we're an imperfect people, that we all make mistakes, and that we need to learn from those history. And yet, too often, our liberal friends do not learn from history because they want to ignore it or change it.
That's a really good point. We see that, especially now with the tearing down of statues and all this in the name of racial diversity or whatever label they want to put on it.
And they go as far as to want to embrace Sharia law, which is oppression.
Right. Oh yeah.
And that makes a good point about the point with history is I think that if they really studied and saw what these people actually stand for, it's against a lot of the things they claim to stand for. Women's rights, and, all of this stuff. So you make a really good point that history is incredibly important, and unfortunately, and especially in the younger generation, I would even throw myself in there as well. Liberals and conservatives alike just don't understand their history. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that, why that's so important, and what that has to do with the secret societies who are in power today when we come back right after this.
Imagine a supernatural thriller that brings the cutting-edge Christian research of Tom Horn, Steve Quayle, and L.A. Marzulli alive through the skill of a master storyteller. Set in Victorian England during Jack the Ripper's reign of terror, the new novel by Sharon K. Gilbert asks the question, what if the Ripper wasn't caught because he wasn't human? And what if his gruesome work was part of a ritual to bring forth the Antichrist? Skywatch TV is proud to offer Blood Lies, Book 1 of the Red Wing Saga, the first in a new series by Skywatch TV's Sharon K. Gilbert. Blood Lies tells the story of a valiant group of men and women who stand against the ancient enemy of mankind, with nothing but a prayer and the power of the Holy Spirit to protect them. Plus, when you order Blood Lies from Skywatch TV, we'll also include 2 additional books to prepare you for the real spiritual battles that all Christians face. Lucifer's War by Linda Rios Brooke, a historical examination of Satan and the demon gods who rebelled against their creator. And People, Pigs, and Principalities, true accounts of angels and demons by deliverance minister Don Dickerman. Over a $30 value, absolutely free when you purchase Blood Lies for only $19.95 in this special offer, exclusively at the Skywatch TV store. Blood Lies, a thrilling account of spiritual warfare based on biblical truth, featuring characters you'll grow to love. The Blood Lies special offer available now at the Skywatch TV store.
Welcome back to End of the Multiverse. We are in studio with Lieutenant Colonel Bob Maginnis, author of The Deeper State. And if you want to get a hold of this book, and I highly suggest that you do, you'll have to keep your eye out on Skywatch TV. In the next, coming in a few weeks, there's going to be some programs that you'll want to check out. You want to get this book. And, of course, it's a Tom Horn thing, so there's you get a whole bunch of extra stuff with it that's exclusive to Skywatch TV that you can't get anywhere else. So continuing the discussion, when we left off, we were talking about the importance of history and how important it is to know history so you can learn from it. In light of that, what's the history of these secret societies who are in power now and pulling the strings now, and why is it so important for not only millennials, both on the conservative and liberal sides, but just anybody, and any American? Why is it so important to know and understand that?
Well, we've had secret societies, obviously, for thousands of years. Certainly in this country, there have been many, whether it's the Freemasons or even back in 1868 when Pulaski, Tennessee formed the Ku Klux Klan.
Right.
They took images out of the Greek mythology, and they were a mechanism by then the Democratic Party as a terrorist arm to perpetrate rape and murder and all sorts of destruction. And they wanted to, prevent this release of slaves. They wanted to resurrect the pre-Civil War era in which slavery was real, a terrible tragedy on our country. Advance forward, and here you have the groups like the Bilderberger Foundation. What do? They're a bunch of high rollers, very wealthy people, very influential people that come together on an annual basis, and they bring in candidates. They brought in Jimmy Carter before he was known outside of Georgia to become the president of the United States. They fed him with all sorts of ideas, and then of course he goes into government with their help, with their deep pockets, and then Carter just fills his cabinet with people of like mind, people that helped recruit him. And what do they do once they get into government? They have an ideology, a focus that is going to serve the purposes of those that put them in office. Same thing with the Trilateral Commission, same thing with the Council for Foreign Relations. Council for Foreign Relations spawned out of the League of Nations back in the 1920, which was supposed to be an answer to the world's problems. Not only was it going to do away with war, but it was going to address hunger and other social issues. Now, of course, it failed. It did not pass in this country, and Woodrow Wilson was forever harmed because he tried to push an agenda the Senate didn't embrace. We see the same thing with the United Nations and so forth. These organizations have routinely, over the last almost 100 years, had a significant influence on the direction of the federal government. They not only come with money, they come with direction, they come with people that they put into all these key positions, and they expect their agenda to be pushed. Now, groups like the Council of Foreign Relations will say, we're an open group, we don't manipulate. Sure. If you have all of your people running all the major departments at double layers down, you've already laid out an agenda before the president comes in and establishes that cabinet, and then the organization these people start to move in that direction. Yes, there is influence. Now, some of that influence is behind the scenes, some of it's up front. But we have a lot of secret organizations, the Bohemian Club, the Freemasons, Skull and Bones up at Yale. There are a whole host of these. And like I say, these are people that typically are high rollers, deep pockets, the George Soroses of the world, who go in and basically buy allegiance and then influence the direction of policy through people they place in key positions.
And you see a lot of these societies starting to rear their ugly heads nowadays, and you see Trump coming out and trying to rectify some of the things that have gone out in government. Do you think that a lot of the so-called secrets from these secret societies are going to start coming out to light even more with Trump in presidency?
Well, there's sort of a misnomer. Technically, they aren't secrets.
Right.
What's happening in secret is they're planning, they're plotting. And they're saying, this is what we need to do. We need to establish a policy that looks like this. Now, the byproduct of that policy is going to enrich certain people. It's going to give power to other people. But it's not announced to the world that we're meeting in secret to do this. But key people benefit. They are in many cases manipulated totally by their own lust for power. And that's what we see in the globalist movement, what we see in the progressive movement and so forth. So, there are some things that are truly done and kept in secret.
Yes.
But we have, Paul Ryan has gone to the Bilderbergers, and he's the Speaker of the House. Now, why would he go there? There is a law that says you will not conduct public policy in secret.
That's
but
right.
Yet, I couldn't get into the Bilderbergers meetings on an annual basis. They would refuse that.
Wow.
You couldn't get in. The reporters are not allowed in. So why in the world are they going to these meetings? And we know where they're meeting with the wealthiest and the most influential people in the world from many, many nations. So they're conducting foreign policy as well. Why should that be permitted?
Right.
Are they doing what I would argue in some cases occultic sort of things? What's occultic? Occultic is secret knowledge. They have secret knowledge about plans, about about conspiracies that they're putting together to get what they want, what they truly want. And it doesn't serve our general public interest, it serves their private interest in many cases.
Right, very true. And even some of that came out in the WikiLeaks emails. And have you, in working in the Pentagon and kind of being in that world, have you personally witnessed anything that the rest of the population might think is shocking or maybe even unbelievable? You know, things like the occult or witchcraft or that sort of thing.
Yes, and some I can actually talk about.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Well, because those of us that are charged with protecting the secrets of the nation are sworn not to talk about certain things.
Sure.
But clearly, I have seen nefarious activities through the years. I'm aware of, for instance, my mother was a personal assistant to Jean Dixon, which was Jean Dixon back in the 60s and 70s. Forget when Jean died. She would have easy access to the White House, and she would be a paranormal and working with ladies, first ladies, and helping them, like Hillary Clinton supposedly talked to Eleanor Roosevelt. Through whatever mechanism, strange as it may seem. You had these paranormal things, these what I consider demonic things that happen in Washington. I've personally had contact with people in government that are of a persuasion that I would consider, they called themselves witches. I'm not sure what they were exactly, but it wasn't certainly something I was comfortable with. Just like any 2.6 million person population, you're going to have some very interesting people in there with various agendas. I'm not making the allegation that the government is totally controlled by demonic persons or witchcraft or the like. It certainly has an element in there. We've been manipulated by those with a political authority. Certainly under Barack Obama, when he was president, he did things that I never would have thought was possible because he had political authority. He could say, you will do this. And so we changed a lot of policies that fit his very progressive and I think very evil agenda. Yes, I have seen some things, and like I say, some things I can talk about.
Well, it's totally understandable. Now, there have been, talking about the secret societies, there have been a few, and I don't even see how this would be possible, but there have been a few who, and I kind of understand why they say it, I just don't agree with it, but who say that, you know, these secret societies have influence, they have power, you know, they kind of control what's going on behind the scenes. So how in the world did somebody like Donald Trump get to be president unless he's part of that system?
That was my next question.
Yeah, I don't see how he could be part of that system since they hate him so much.
Right.
And even, you know, Newt Gingrich, I forget the exact quote, but when Trump was even just running, he said something to that effect. So, in your opinion, how did we get here? How was Donald Trump able to overcome all these odds to actually get in the White House?
It's a God thing.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Clearly, Trump is not one of these secret handshakers. He's a very wealthy man, very prosperous, never political for the most part. And of course, the Hillary supporters in 2016 never expected that she would be defeated. You know, she had every advantage of being elected, and yet somehow she blew it totally as a candidate. The lobbyists, the secret societies, the influencers in Washington have very deep pockets. They can buy, they think, anybody. They can buy the media, which they've been very effective at doing. They can certainly buy politicians, and you know, it's surprising how quiet some politicians become on certain issues when in fact before they were supportive of a particular position. Money flows well in that city, and if you understand that the vast majority of politicians are only interested in one thing, that's re-election, not necessarily our agenda. Now, Mr. Trump comes to the table and he says, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do as fast as I can. Unfortunately, I don't think he fully appreciated how complex the deep state is. Not only is it an administrative bureaucracy that is insist upon running as it has in the past. But unless you put people in positions that truly understand how nefarious this bureaucracy is and is willing to break glass in order to get them to go in a different direction which fits his agenda, then you'll never get anything accomplished, because the people that are lined up behind this bureaucracy and the rest of the political class are not going to cooperate. Look at the statements that are coming out of some of the key political leaders in the Congress. They're not supporting the president the way they should. Mm-hmm. Why? Because they have people that are pulling their strings to a certain degree with tangible assets saying, you want to get reelected. They don't say it as subtly as perhaps that, but they are saying it.
Mm-hmm. So in light of all of this, if you had to give one piece of advice to conservative millennials today on how to proceed, because I do think the landscape is changing, but it's still difficult, and of course we should expect opposition when we're trying to, but the opposition from the left I think can be extremely intimidating. What advice would you give to millennials, especially conservative millennials today, who want to get involved and just don't really know how or what they should do, how they should start? What would you say?
Well, I've hired a lot of millennials to work with me in the Pentagon. Most of them come with reasonably good beginning credentials on international relations and foreign policy. I would encourage any young person that's concerned about the direction of this country to get involved in government, to join a bureaucracy as a job, and to be a true conservative influence in that environment, to become involved in a political campaign where you can really support the candidates, to call on your congressmen and your federal government to, really push policy issues of concern to you and in the best interest of the country. We've had a lot of people, conservatives, especially Christians, who've abandoned this process. And as a result, the federal government is run by, in many cases, rogues, rogue bureaucrats, rogue political class people, even people that gain the White House have a very nefarious ambitions for the future of this country. We need to wrestle back control of the country, and it begins with each individual doing the right thing.
Amen. Well, I couldn't agree with you more. And I want to thank you so much for being on the show. This has been fantastic. We'll definitely have to have you back on again sometime.
Well, thank you very much.
Absolutely. If you at home are interested in the deeper state, please keep an eye out for Skywatch TV. Those programs are coming up. You're going to want to check those out. You're going to want to get this book. And if you are a conservative, millennial, Christian, like me and Christina here, you are not alone. There's actually a lot of you out there. So hopefully programs like this can become more popular and become a beacon of hope, and maybe we can start taking back some of the mainstream media. But so we want to thank you so much for joining us yet again into the Multiverse. Until next time, take care and God bless.